All right, welcome everyone to the Kansas 911 GIS user group meeting for the first quarter of 2025. I would say it's definitely been an interesting first quarter with our crazy weather and everything we've been having so far this year, but I hope everyone's doing well and glad you could join us today. We'll be following our usual agenda, which will be kind of a tag team between myself, Will Trimble, and Sherry Massey. So I'll kick things off and give kind of some general project updates for 911. Then I'll hand it off to Will Trimble with some toolbox updates, and then off to Sherry Massey for GeoMSAG training and other various 911 topic type of discussion, things that she wants to cover. Okay, so for the 911 project update, here's the big news announcement. The 2024 Kansas 911 imagery has passed or has completed the QA phase. So thank you to our over 50 volunteers that took the time to review literally every single tile throughout the state of Kansas. So we once again are the envy of the nation because Certix is always just blown away that we get so many volunteers to help us review the imagery and QA it. Many states just do like a partial QA and is not nearly as thorough as we are. So thank you to everyone. We couldn't do it without you and all of our 50 volunteers. So through the QA, there were some areas flagged as for possible reflight or just maybe some color correction or, whatever was flagged through the QA. So Surdex is working through that, and they said they should have the first iteration of the data, which would be the vast majority of the state. It will be statewide, except some reflight areas, just because, the weather hasn't cooperated so good. That will be shipped to DASC on March 14th, so a week from today. We're really excited to get that imagery. So with that, there will be a few areas they identified as reflights, that areas that just got a little leafy or maybe had color issues or thing like that. But I don't think it's very small areas throughout the state. They plan to refly those as soon as possible and get those delivered, kind of expedite the processing and delivery of those. So we should have the full state with reflights and everything in just the next couple of months. So what's that mean for all of you? As you can see, there's the specs for the imagery, and we will be getting it in multiple formats. So we will be putting the Mr. SID files out for download as soon as we get the data. So we have a few things we have to do to the data. After we receive it, we do a quick check to make sure we have all the files. We have to rename them. We have to zip them up. We have to get them moved to a server. We have to get links set up. So there's a few things for us to do on our side before the data's out, either for download. And then also we'll be working on setting up a service, an imagery service that you all can ingest and use as well. So we'll try to keep announcements coming and updates as we have the data available, but just know we're getting really close to having it in-house to actually set that all up for you. So be on the lookout on the DASC website. And once we have it posted, we'll probably send some sort of announcement out to let you know the imagery is available. All right, so very excited about new imagery. I thought it'd be interesting also, so moving off from imagery, just to talk to you about the data submissions and data, the GIS data for 911, to give you some numbers around the GIS data. Again, we're also the envy of the nation because people are like, oh, wow, you get everyone to actually submit data throughout the year, quarterly, and as needed. So I thought, well, what's that mean to all of you? So for 2024, just for the calendar year of 2024, we got 599 GIS data submissions. Of those 565 submissions, there were changes. And as you can see, the different totals there, those are the type of changes we got. And we also received some no changes submissions, which is perfectly acceptable because some jurisdictions might not have a new address point or road change within a quarter's time period. So I thought that was pretty impressive to say that this is a lot of the work that Will Trimble does, which is accepting the data, validating it, processing, aggregating it statewide, and then also making the statewide 911 weekly updates, which is to the EGDMS, updates to the 911 call handling mapping software, which is Radius and the PSAPs, and Lightning is the mobile application, and then also updating the Kansas 911 geocoding services. So there's always a lot of moving parts with the data being submitted and processed and aggregated and services being updated and things. So just kind of give you a snapshot of the magnitude of what's going on behind the scenes. Also with that, we accept GIS data requests through the 911 portal, and just thought I'd let you know that we had 54 of those that were processed in the last calendar year as well. All right, so that's kind of by the numbers. Moving on to another topic. I wanted to bring up, so of course we all know you need to submit your the mandatory data layers for 911, and that it's mandated to do at minimal quarterly. So I want to do a reminder about submitting that optional data. And optional is kind of a flexible term there because while it might be optional for truly routing a call to the right PSAP, these optional layers have become very important to the dispatchers that receive these calls and provide information for the responders to go to these calls. So two of those important optional data layers are the parcels and city boundaries. So I kind of wanted to talk through that workflow because sometimes this gets a little confusing depending on how you submit the data. So it's really your choice. You can submit the parcels and city boundary, data through the 911 portal along with your 911 submission. Just zip it up in that geodatabase. That's great. You could alternatively submit it through the ORCA portal, portal for that data, or you could submit them through both. We'll take it however you want to submit it to us. And really the key thing here is that that even though it's optional, I have a snapshot to show you that how this data is used in the 911 call handling map. So this is a snapshot just of an area and radius. So this is kind of a replica of what a dispatcher sees in their PSAP. And they have become very dependent on things like, of course, address points and roads and all those important elements, but they also really rely on city boundaries for knowing if they're sending the right responder to the right location, but also parcel information. So when you zoom in, I know you can't see the detail much in the snapshot, but as you zoom in, it shows the property boundary from the parcels that you provide, as well as the owner name. And we've been told over and over again how valuable that is, so they kind of know who they're dealing with on this emergency. Maybe if they can identify themselves, but the name of the owner of the building will help them, or the house or whatever. So it's just become kind of optional, but also critical information, because I guess put it this way, if I was calling 911, I'd want them to know as much about my property and me to get me help as they could. So that's just another layer of information that's really helpful for the dispatcher. So thank you for submitting those. We need them to be submitted and updated as well. Kind of the recurrence of that is up to you, but if it's a change and it's important and there's new names on parcels or things have been split, then I think parcels should be submitted as those updates happen. So if anyone has any questions about that, I think another caveat I want to say is, even if, I know we we work on the ORCA project, and so we have a lot of counties we serve up the ORCA application for the parcel viewer. So even if you aren't an ORCA county, know that when you submit parcels, it's used by your PSAP in this manner. So you could go to your PSAP, and visit your PSAP, which I encourage everyone to do if they'll allow you to come in and actually see their map, and you would see exactly what I'm showing you here. You would see the parcel data and city boundaries on this well. So that's my little soapbox to encourage you all to submit your parcels and city boundaries along with all the other great data you're submitting, so we can keep the map fresh and updated for the call handlers. Okay, with that, I think I'm ready to hand it over to Will Trimble.
Talk in there, talk through. Good afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining us. I'll keep mine relatively short. A lot of it's the same things that have been coming down the pipeline for a little while here, but I'll do a quick review of that, and we should see some releases coming out both next week and then ideally at the end of this month, the start of next month. So if you've been to these meetings, you've heard me talk a few times about transitioning to an official pro supported toolbox. So that should be finishing and rolling out here. Hopefully that will be around the start of the next quarter. You can currently operate most of at least the submission and validation tools in pro as they are, with a couple of caveats on some minor issues with some dates and other things we've talked about in the past. But we'll have something that hopefully has rectified all those and is fully functional for all the additional tools in the toolbox as well, or at least the core tools for validation. And then we may roll out some of the other ones as needed. I know Sherry and I have talked about changing support on a couple different things to update some things that are in the existing toolbox that are kind of legacy scripts. So we may do a little cleanup of the overall toolbox as well when that pro toolbox comes out. But along with that is going to be a new update and refresh of all the documentation, basically a new story map, and then just some update of the actual documents that exist with the toolbox. And then I've also been working on the tooltips, because I think a lot of the actual toolbox tools are missing the tooltip helper as well. So we're going to transition some of that stuff that's in that documentation and we'll be in the story map also to the tooltips if people need that. Again, it's something with most people in maintenance, probably a lot of the usage of that is not great, but it's still nice to have it there in case somebody else uses it or somebody else from another state is looking at the tools or just trying to figure out what some of these things do. It's just helpful to have that information out there. And then lastly, we will have the Kansas NG911 GIS data model release, which will be a new toolbox release along with a new template. It won't affect any of the data that's coming in from you guys. We're basically just slightly adjusting some of the fields that are included, taking some fields out, and then we're going to add some post-processing things. So it shouldn't affect any of our users as far as the data submissions or data maintenance, but there'll be a slight change to how we maintain some of that data. And then those post-processing changes will be updated on the council site. There's a post-processing doc that's available there. And I'll try and make, at least for the initial release of it, something that highlights what those new changes are in that document. So it'll be easier to find if you're trying to look through that and find what those changes are. So basically, yeah, some updates and documentation to make things compliant with the direction that Esri's going, and our toolbox stays relevant and compliant with the technologies available to everybody, and just staying with where they should be. So that's all for mine. That story map is there for previous toolbox information. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Will. Now we're gonna pass it off to Sherry Massey.
Hey, everybody. I went ahead and left this slide. You might remember it from the last session, but I went through it, or I left it because I want to go through a real brief review of our indoor mapping project. So we had 4 different companies using different methodologies map Central Elementary in Lyons, Kansas. That was SAM, Geocom, CRG, and Datamark. We reviewed the data that they returned to us, really looking for a few things. Can it be used within the mapping application that Eileen showed you earlier, Radius, without much work? Does it have enough information to help when we're trying to locate callers on kind of which floor they're on, the Z-axis information that is starting to come in from cell phones? And does it work with Esri indoors, ArcGIS indoors, and do we care if it works with ArcGIS indoors? Trying to understand what tools are available to deal with indoor mapping data and how the various products provided by the vendors might work with those tools. And the goal of the project was an informational document for anyone that was considering indoor mapping in Kansas. Basically, we were just trying to put together some guidelines to help people understand if they did want indoor mapping, floor plans, anything like that, what kinds of things they needed to ask for to be able to support ongoing 911 services. So how that actually worked out. It says what we learned so far, but the truth is the project is over. The document is out and available to you. But what we learned is that there is a lot of really interesting 3D stuff out there. But it is not all useful within the 911 center. Floor plans are pretty useful. That 2D data is pretty useful. And understanding where that 2D data sort of sits in the 3D world is useful, but the actual 3D wireframe style data is not terribly useful for 911 right now anyway. And really the most important thing is just an easy to interpret floor plan. Hopefully something that you don't need a legend for in the middle of a 911 call to try to figure out. So the reason I wanted to go back over this again is that very last bullet at the bottom of the screen. There is a piece of legislation that is not all the way through the Kansas legislature yet, but if it goes all the way to the end of the process without changing, there will be a substantial amount of money available for indoor mapping grants statewide. This will go through the 911 centers. The 911 centers will have to be the ones that apply for them, but the money is intended for the collection of floor plans in schools in Kansas. And by schools, I mean elementary and secondary schools, public and private. So if this is something that your county or city has been interested in the past, if it's something that a school district in the area has been interested in that kind of thing, you might sort of keep an eye on this space, because we'll certainly be putting out information to you guys when we have a little more information available, and when should the project actually pass all the way through the legislature. So more to come on that, but it is entirely possible that we'll be mapping somewhere between 100 and 300 schools in the next year if this money turns out to come through. So I wanted to talk just a little brief bit about training and about PSP. So the data maintainer training will continue to be offered pre-conference at CAM. That's the only session that we are doing of it live. And if there's anything special you would like us to go over in that session, please let us know so that we can be preparing the materials as the year goes on. And then the PSP database, you guys have heard me talking about it for a terribly long time, long enough, frustratingly long even. But we have been waiting for quite a while for users, particularly you, the GIS maintainers across the state, to be added as users to the PSP database. And it's almost become a joke. Every few months, I hit up AT&T and say, hey, have you done that yet? And they say, we're working on it. And it just keeps going that way. It's been that way for quite a long time. Well, the last time I asked the question, I said, hey, have you done that yet? They said, we're going to do it right now. And that was quite literal. So the users all got added in probably the next 2 to 3 days after I asked the question. So you may have gotten an email saying, hey, you have access to the PSP database, or some people even got an email that said, hey, your access to the PSP database is expired. Do you want to renew your password? It was a fumbling rollout we didn't know was happening. I apologize for the confusion it might have caused. But if you got one of those emails, and if you did set the password and do all of that for that database, that is the database that you can go into and see the telephone records and the MSAG records that are created from your GIS data. So it's not a place where you go to edit anything. It's just a place that you go to take a look at functionally what AT&T and Entrado did with your GIS data when we gave it to them, so that they could fill out the MSAG and kind of put guards on what addresses phone companies could use for those telephone records. So it's just a tool for you to look at if somebody calls and says, hey, I've got an address that I'm trying to put into the database and it's not working. You can still reach out to Will. You can still reach out to me. We will do our best to help you out. But if you have that username, if that got created by AT&T, then you can also go in and look for yourself. So there will be some training that AT&T offers. We'll be sending out announcements for that when the date gets set by AT&T. And it is quite likely in the data maintainer class this year, we were going to take a little time to go over how PSP works and how you as a data maintainer in Kansas might be interested in using the database. So it is not something that people need on a daily basis for the most part. So I know it's a little while before we get to the data maintainer training, but I really think that'll be okay. Like I said, you're welcome to reach out to us if you have any questions in the meantime. And then just kind of a wrap up on outreach. We're going to continue, obviously, doing the quarterly user group webinars. The GIS data steward training is available for PSAP personnel on the Coordinating Council's learning platform. And like I said, the data maintainer training will be at the pre-conference workshop. We have the links to the couple of GIS sites here, but I also want to point out that there are 2 logos next to the coordinating council. And those 2 logos are the Kansas 911 Coordinating Council logo, which is the one that we are under now. But as of July 1, we will become the State 911 Board, and our logo will change. We will also be changing things such as the informational website the council has, the email addresses of the people that work for the council, things like that. Although my email address is already changed. So if you have my current information, it's not going anywhere. But as we cycle through all of this, understand that the portal where you do data submissions and really everything associated with GIS is still going to be available through Dask, through the hub, and that is not going to change with this process. So I think that's it for my update.
Right, thank you, Sherry. So I've got the chat open in case anyone has a question they want to submit in chat or even come off mute and tell us. It's similar to what Sherry said with the feedback on the GIS data maintainer class. If there's particular content you would like to see in these user group meetings, feel free to reach out to Eileen. And, if there's specific questions or topics or curiosities, whatever, if you have the question, I'm sure somebody else does too. So just contact me and let me know. We can provide that information in the user group. One other thing I forgot to say about the imagery is, in addition to creating the service to put out for public consumption, of course, we'll be working on the service that'll be tied into the radius map. That's the underlying base map for those address points and roads and parcel boundaries and all that. So that will be coming as well. That's kind of a bigger service. We build a tile cache out of that, so it's a little more intense building and processing of that data. But my whole point of saying all that is in the next, few weeks, and we'll make announcements as well, your PSAP telecommunicators will also see updated imagery appear in their map as well. So we're always excited about that because I love it when we get a call from a PSAP that says, hey, they built a new Dollar General. Can you put it on the imagery or whatever? And so I'm like, as soon as we get it, we sure will. So just know that that will be appearing as soon as we have it processed and ready in the radius map as well. Okay, well, that is all the content we have today, but I'm not seeing any questions. So I'll just pause here a minute to see if anyone wants to come off mute and ask a question, or if anyone types anything in. You've got, actually, we're sitting in a room together. We're having a meeting today, so you have all 3 of us, all of our attention, if anyone has anything you want to bring up. Well, I'm not seeing anything. So if you think of something after the meeting, as always, reach out to myself, Will, or Sherry. We're happy to help you out. We've recorded this meeting, so I'll post it out on the 911 Coordinating Council website, as well as the Dask Hub, as well as the slides. So reach out if you need anything. Otherwise, thanks a bunch for joining us today. And here we go. We have a question. Let's hold on. All right, the question is, how many counties are on geospatial call routing?
All right, I have to do math right quick. 99. 99. Geospatial call routing is happening for every county that is on the council's hosted solution. So everywhere outside of the Mid-America Regional Council. And it's you could argue that some of the cell calls in the Mid-America Regional Council region are also being routed geospatially as well.
And I think the Kansas host solution, the more I talk to other states and understand how they're setting up their 911 system, it's pretty unique that Kansas is the majority of Kansas, exception of the Mark region, is all in the same call handling platform with the call handling and the map as well. So we're kind of unique in that.
And just to kind of be clear on that, in case somebody is curious, any call that comes in with an address, so wireline calls and a certain type of voice over IP calls, those are all geospatially routed. And then all of the cellular calls are geospatially routed either by the location of the handset, if that location comes in fast enough, or by the geocoding of the information related to the tower the cell phone is connected to, if the handset location information doesn't come in fast enough. So It is literally 100% of the calls, unless something has failed within the system at this point on the hosted side.
Good question. All right, not seeing any others. Thanks for the question and thanks again for joining us today. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.